we have a very accomplished lady here with us who we are going to interview. Her name is Cynthia Chun.
My father came from Canton, China at the age of 13. He was put on a ship, didn't speak a word of English, and he put a little label on him and plopped him on the ship to go to America. He landed in Los Angeles with a little name tag. They put him on a train, and he arrived in San Francisco, and his uncle picked him, bought him a complete new outfit, and brought him out to the Delta. And that's where my father grew up the rest of his life, in the Delta, working on a potato farm. So I was born in San Francisco, and then I grew up in Stockton, and it was quite an interesting community at that time, growing up in the 40s and the 50s. As a matter of fact, when I was born in 1943, that was the time that the Chinese were allowed to vote in California. I thought that was significant at that time frame. Mm-hmm. Yes, and so growing up in Stockton was quite an interesting experience. In my neighborhood, we were one of only 5 Chinese or Asian families, to be specific. And prejudice was due to ignorance because we were different. I couldn't speak English that well. And my mother was, even though she spoke English, and my father spoke broken English and Chinese, they didn't feel they could be involved with the community because they didn't feel welcome to be involved with PTA or school activities. So therefore, as a child, I felt even more isolated due to the fact that my parents were not involved with school, due to the language communication. And I felt like I was just a child in existence. I was no longer a child actively participating in the classroom. I was just merely an observer, hoping to just go from one grade to the next to the next. I didn't really learn English appropriately until I went to college. I had a personal experience where I had some Caucasian girlfriends, and I was invited to a house party, but I was told in no uncertain terms that I was to bring my own escort, and it had to be a Chinese boy, not a Caucasian boy.
Okay.
And if I did that, I wasn't going to be in trouble with them.
Okay.
And then also school dances, you never dance with a Caucasian boy. It was Asians only, and that was it. You were invited to the gatherings, but you never intermingled.
Okay.
I met my husband when I was about 17. A friend of ours introduced us. I got married when I was about 19 in 1963. And then I moved from Stockton to San Leandro with my husband at that time, and his name was Wilfred Chun. And we lived in San Leandro. It was predominantly all-white community. And then I worked in the Oakland Police Department. Now, coming from Stockton, a small town gal, going into the city of Oakland was quite an experience. In the police department, that was interesting too. And I found out the policemen, they worked very hard, but also there was starting the civil rights movement, and the Black Panther movement was starting, and the NAACP was starting at that time. So a lot of things were going on in the early 60s. We had a Chinese wedding where in the typical Chinese service, that when you married a man, your mother gives you up to the in-laws. You are no longer their daughter.
Right.
I now belong to my in-laws, and I am to do their biddings, and literally their biddings at that time, and to take care of them forever. We decided it was time to start a family, so we moved over to Union City. There was the first little tract home off of Dakota Road near Perry Farm, around that area. And we all spent on Perry Road, where we had our first house. And then my daughter, Annette Chun, was born there. Then my second child was born in 1967. His name is Kevin Michael Chun. My daughter started kindergarten in Union City, but we noticed that the schools, we felt the opportunity was, for us at that time, we felt Mattis had a lot to offer with Phil Holmes as the principal there. So we moved into that neighborhood in the Glenmore area. My son, he was graduate from Washington High School. He was the senior class president, and he was also known as Mr. Husky at Washington High School. And he went on to Santa Clara, UCLA, and then now he's a clinical psychologist at USF professor. And my daughter was a special ed teacher. She's in education also. She came back here to Fremont to work for a while as a special ed teacher, and now she's living with her husband and her 2 boys in Maui. I started teaching piano as a housewife, and then I became involved with the Music Teaching Association of California. And from there, I had quite a few students who received some local awards for the Composers Award at the Lonely Children's Concert. And I taught piano for about 20 years. And I taught children from ages of 5 on up to seniors in their 70s. for me, living in the city of Fremont has been a wonderful opportunity for me, because I started going back to school when my children grew up at Alameda College when they were still at the Washington Boulevard location before they moved to the new location on Mission Boulevard.
Okay.
And from there, they was at that school, there was a very strong support, a community support of women returning back to school. Growing up in a Chinese community where the women had not much voice, we were secondary in that culture.
Mm-hmm.
To come into the city of Fremont and living by myself, raising the two children, has given me a growth spurt. Literally, the city of Fremont has provided this community an opportunity for me to grow personally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on to become a school teacher, because
Mm-hmm.
I've always felt like it was time to pay back to the community and become an educator. And as an educator, I felt I had to do something with such a diverse community in the city of Fremont. What can I do to help children who are having a language problem? Because as I was growing up, my primary language at that time was Chinese. I had a very difficult time learning English.
Mm-hmm.
So from this desire to help my children to learn English, for all the children, regardless of their ethnic background,
Mm-hmm.
I decided to get involved with producing a television magazine. Well, thanks to the children, I have learned so much from them. And that's been the awesome experience. And because of our experience together, I became a recipient of the Alameda County Teacher of the Year Award
Mm-hmm.
due to our television production. And in 1991, I became a recipient of the Krista McCullough Fellowship. From that initial Krista McCullough Fellowship, we were able to finance our first studio equipment.
Okay.
And then I received again, 10 years later, the second Krista McCullough Fellowship. I was one of 2 California teachers, and we were 2 of 60 teachers across the United States who received this fellowship too. And the people have been outpouring their support for all of us and making this magazine so supportive that it's wonderful to give me the opportunity to say thank you to the City of Fremont and happy birthday to the City of Fremont.
Really happy birthday to Fremont.
Absolutely.